Does your pastor hate Easter? Because I used to. Hey everybody, my name is Jay Buston, and I was a pastor for 11 years. And in those 11 years, I saw a lot of stuff. I went through a lot of things, and I have a lot of unique experiences that I would like to share with you. One of them being the really, really weird, kind of ironic situation that for a good long while, I hated Easter, which is kind of messed up because on paper, I loved Easter. What it means, what it represented, I often referred to it as the greatest day in history, but getting through it was just how I survived for years and years and years. Every time Easter would come along, I would have so much to do as a pastor. And it got to the point where I found myself right before Easter Sunday talking to another pastor, one of my mentors that I looked up to a lot. And we were just kind of standing there. I remember we were in the back of a sanctuary and we were just kind of leaning against a wall and we were just kind of not saying much. And I looked at him and I said, "Do you even enjoy Easter anymore?" And this man had been a pastor for a long time, probably almost 30 years at this point. And he turned to me and he looked at me and he said, "I haven't enjoyed Easter in a long time." And that's sad. It's so sad. And in my situation, I did it to myself. I bit off more than I could chew because I'm the kind of person that likes to be helpful. I like to be involved. And at the time, I think I also had an issue giving up control. I was a bit of a control freak. But I'm not gonna completely let my church off the hook. They definitely put a lot on my shoulders as well. So let me walk through Passion Week or Holy Week or whatever you want to call it. That's what's coming up this week right now. If you're watching this at the point where this video is being released. But that's the week that leads up to Easter. So Sunday is Palm Sunday. So at the church that I was working at, the last church I worked at before I retired or went on a 6-year sabbatical so far, I was the youth pastor. I kind of played like a mini associate pastor role. I was the worship director, and I kind of ran the AV team as well. Not to mention social media, photography, all this other stuff. I did a lot. And again, a lot of that was I put myself in those situations because I liked to lead worship. I liked to lead youth group. I liked to preach every now and then. I liked to run social media. I enjoyed doing all of these things. Sunday morning is Palm Sunday. And some years I was teaching a Sunday school class, so I'm doing that, and then I'm leading worship during the church service, and then I'm running the slides, the AV, all that stuff during the sermon and things like that. And then Wednesday is Bible study. Thursday is what's called Maundy Thursday. That's the church service that observes the death of Jesus. It's usually very serious, very somber, and is honestly one of my favorite church services of the entire year. I love the Maundy Thursday service. It's a very powerful, moving church service. And so during that, I'm leading worship, slides, things like that. And then we had a Good Friday service, same deal, worship. So I have to run worship practice for all of these services too. So we're practicing. And then we have Saturday was youth group. And then Sunday is Easter, where we had 2 services, one sunrise service, which would literally take place as the sun was rising. So you're talking 6:30 in the morning. And that was my service to run. The church was like, hey, we want the youth group to run the sunrise service. So I have to organize this whole church service. I have to get kids out of bed and in church at 6 o'clock in the morning to do things like skits, run videos, sing songs, recite and read Bible verses and stuff like that. I would preach the sermon. And it was a huge undertaking. It was easily the hardest thing I did all year. The thing that I would put the most effort into was this sunrise service. And I hated it. Oh, did I hate it. Because trying to get high school kids and middle school kids interested in showing up to a church service at 6:30 in the morning, 6 in the morning, for a church service that they don't necessarily enjoy, because the church that we were working at was very split. They had the youth group was strong. We had, some years we had 30, 35 kids in this youth group. And then you had the church, the rest of the church. And it was difficult to get the youth group kids to the church service because the church service wasn't geared towards young people. It wasn't. It was very, we weren't a Catholic church, but sometimes it felt like it, because it was very much like, stand now, recite this, sit down, we're going to sing this hymn from the 1700s, and now we're going to, and every time we would kind of make a push to try to liven up the church service to make it a place where the youth were interested in attending, we were kind of met with resistance, and it's there's an old joke out there, like, how many Baptists does it take to change a light bulb? Change? We weren't a Baptist church, but we might as well have been sometimes. But it was difficult. And I don't mean to speak ill of my church, because I loved my church. I worked there for almost a decade. But it was hard. It was frustrating. It was like pulling teeth. And every time I would recommend that, hey, why don't we make the youth service, the one that the youth group is more involved in, the main service, because that's at 11 in the morning, and it's a lot easier to get kids excited about running a church service at 11 a.m. than it is 5:30, 6 o'clock. You know what I'm talking about? And that was just, again, change. Like, it was just like, no, you can't have that. And it was very frustrating. My last year there, petitioned to cancel it completely, because by the time we were kind of getting to the end of my tenure at that church, a lot of the kids had graduated and moved on, and we were down to like maybe 6 to 10 kids in the youth group. And a lot of them had Easter plans and couldn't make the sunrise service, and so actually none of the kids showed up. And so it was this church service that was supposed to be run by kids, and there were no kids. And so I just did the whole thing myself, and just like, we had recorded some videos ahead of time of the kids, doing some stuff, and we just played that. And it was basically just, you showed up at church and you watched TV, and that's all it was. And at that point, one of the elderly people of the church who was in a position of power walked up to me, and they were like, maybe we do need to revisit this sunrise service thing. And then I quit a month later, but that's another story for another day. But just all this to say that I was doing so much, and I was so busy. Again, a lot of it self-inflicted. I know I'm not painting the best picture of my church, but there are reasons I stayed there for as long as I did. I loved it. But after that long week, I was so tired come the end of the second church service that I was just glad it was over. And that's not a healthy place to be, man. I mean, Easter is such a good, important holiday, and it means so much. And on the other side of the curtain now, where I'm just attending a church, I enjoy it so much more. But just the difficulties that I faced, and how strong I felt about trying to change things and being met with resistances and stuff like that, I was just so glad when it was over. And just turning to, my head pastor, my mentor, and just being like, hey, do you even enjoy Easter anymore? And him just saying, I haven't enjoyed Easter in years. It's rough. And I'm glad I'm in a place now where I'm on the other side of the curtain, and I don't have to worry about production, and I don't have to worry about making sure that everyone's hearts are in the right place. I'm not leading others. I'm not doing anything. I just attend, and I love Easter again. I do. I genuinely love Easter. Easter is often referred to as like the WrestleMania of the church, which is ironic because WrestleMania and Easter are on the same weekend this year. But it's the big show. It's hard as a church worker to try to make sure that everyone is in the right mindset, that everyone is in the right place mentally, emotionally, spiritually, because there's so much going on, and you really have to stop and take a look at your heart, and take a look at the people you're leading, take a look at their hearts, and make sure that they're okay, and that they're not exhausted like I was. And I'm not blaming my pastor. I'm not blaming my church. Again, most of it's on me because I volunteered, and I did all of those things on a volunteer basis, Towards the end of my time, I did start to feel burnout, and I said, hey, I'm not going to be the worship leader anymore, and I'm not going to run the website anymore, or the socials and all that stuff, and I was just the youth pastor, and that was it. But for years and years and years, I was so tired. So tired of Easter. And so my prayer is that if you're involved in ministry in some way, that hopefully you get a chance to step back and to take a look at what the day is and what the day means, and really enjoy it and celebrate it for what it is, because it is the greatest day in history. And if you're not involved in ministry, be it whether you're like full-time, part-time, volunteer, even if you're just like, a greeter at the door, doing parking lot ministry, or running PowerPoint or Pro Presenter or whatever program it is that your church uses, or leading worship, no matter how you're involved, I hope that you get a chance to step back and to look at what the holiday is and what it truly means. And if you're not involved in that way, if you're just like I am now, where you're just attending, I hope you take a minute and you pray for those that are involved in church ministry, and you get a chance to lift them up, because they need it this time of year. Like I said, this is the WrestleMania of church, and they're tired. They're exhausted. My pastor is sick as a dog right now. I feel awful, but show must go on, Anyway, that's my perspective. I hope that I was able to, because I know that for a church worker, for a pastor to admit, like, hey, I hate Easter, that's I know there are some pastors out there, some church workers, volunteers, that say to themselves, man, I just can't wait till all this is over, but I feel bad saying that. Don't worry about it. You're not alone, And again, I'm not sitting here saying that I had the right attitude, that I clearly had some issues. I mean, there's a reason I'm not doing church work anymore at the moment. But again, another story for another day. But pray for your church leaders. All right. And church leaders, just know you're not alone, man. And if you need prayer, feel free to reach out, and I will pray. I can pray with you, or I can pray for you. But just let me know how I can be a blessing to you in this time. And just know that I am praying for church workers everywhere in this season, because I've been there. I did it for a long time. And I hope everyone has a great Easter. I hope that this week, as Passion Week kind of unfolds, that we can take a time to reflect and to truly prepare our hearts and minds for what God has for us this week, because it's a big week. And I hope that we all get something out of it, and that it's not just a race to the finish so that I can be done type of thing. All right. I love you. Jesus loves you. I hope you have a good one, and we'll see you next time.